You're listening to the Moms Working Overtime podcast, the community of women you've been searching to find for so long. We bring together our mamas in waiting, brand new moms, stay-at-home moms, working moms, and the moms who maybe just have a little bit more experience than the rest of us. We're all here for community, support, and finding ways to show up better for our families each and every day. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I hope you love what you find on today's episode. Welcome back to the Moms Working Overtime podcast for our monthly Q&A series. This is our second Q&A series that we've been able to do. It's going to be the first Thursday episode of every single month, and bringing in my girl Cierra because we just love to chit chat all things mom. And so it makes for some fun episodes. But good morning, Cierra.
Good morning, as if we weren't already talking about moms. You just hit the record button.
Exactly. Yeah, we've been on here. What do you think? 30 minutes already, Cierra, talking motherhood?
Yeah, about. So it's fine. We'll just start
But
recording.
these episodes are fun because Cierra and I were even just saying we get questions on social media all the time. And if one mom has a question, there are hundreds of other moms that also have this question. And so we're able to just hop on here. You can hang out with us, have a conversation. We're going to go through some of the questions that we get through DMs and through question boxes that we put on social media and just kind of talk our way through them, share a little bit about what we've learned, and hopefully help you along the way. So Cierra, I think you had a question that we were going to start with today. And so I'll let you pick one of the questions that we had grabbed.
We'll start with the one that we'll toddler picky eating, because I think this is one that I get a lot of questions about. Is okay, hey, I'm already offering healthy foods at meals. My kid's still picky. What do I do? How do I navigate this? And my first response is always looking at what are we doing with our routine and our schedule? Because truthfully, if we have a chaotic routine, which hashtag mom life, like some days it is what it is. Looking at the roots of why your kid's not wanting to eat. Are they even hungry, right? Because if you have a schedule where maybe we have breakfast and then 20 minutes later we're having a snack, 30 minutes later we're having another snack, and then you expect them to come to the table and eat lunch, well, they might not have a really good appetite. So I always start with, hey, let's look at what our schedule, or what I like to refer to as just eating routine, and our eating episodes look like. Are they spaced out evenly every 2 to 3 hours, allowing your kid to actually get an appetite? It's okay to allow your kids to get hungry. I think that's something that moms fear, is like, oh my gosh, they're getting hungry. That's okay. You want them and kind of need them to build that appetite, so that way they come to the table hungry and they actually engage with the meal. And to the point of, yep, offering healthy foods at meals, keep exposing. I don't know if I mentioned it on the last podcast, if we got to talk about it, but it can take upwards of almost 30 exposures to a food before a kid even thinks about picking it up and licking it. So some kids are, 10 exposures and they're like, good. Some kids are 30. And so keep offering. And I know that feels mundane and monotonous because you're watching all this food waste. But keep it small portions and keep exposing him. And then with that, routine, exposure, and then offering a safe food alongside the food that you're trying to get them, that they're learning to like, is what I like to say. So a safe food, meaning something that they're going to eat, so that way you can expect that they're going to come to the table and engage with something at the meal. You can feel good knowing that they're going to fill up on something, but they just might feel okay enough to try that new food because it feels safe. So those are the big three things that I like kind of pinpoint, because those are the easiest low-hanging fruit. And then from there, looking at, obviously portion sizes, and then individuality, like demeanor and gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically your kids are going to have different personalities. And so like my son comes to the table and pretty much will eat anything. My daughter, if I put okay, so literally two weeks ago, I talked on social media how she ate 2 cups of broccoli for the first time since she's been like 1 year old. Well, yesterday or 2 days ago, I made broccoli again, and she was like, I like broccoli. I'm going to eat so much of it. I was like, honey, eat whatever you want. She comes to the table and goes, why did you put butter on my broccoli? I do not like it. And I'm like, sis, that's literally what I did last time. And so it's just like, you win some and you lose some. And she didn't eat broccoli that night. She was so mad
Depends
that
on the day.
I put butter on her broccoli. And I was like, okay, well, here we are. So just know that every kid's going to be so different, and their picky might be not picky the next day. So
these are all things I've learned from you. And so I'll give that disclaimer. Like, I'm not going to sit over here on the other side of the podcast and say, I also have all these great tips. Guys, everything I learn about feeding is from Sierra because we have a picky eater. So, firsthand, whatever mama asked this question, I'm so with you. Carter likes grilled cheese and peanut butter and jelly and green beans. And outside of that, we have a really hard time. We used to love bananas. He does not love bananas anymore. But all these tips are things that we implement. And what has helped me if you're struggling is first of all, be willing to let go of the routine to let them get hungry. Carter has gotten to the point where he can talk and he will get up from nap. And we usually do a 3 o'clock, like you know me, Sierra. I'm like, we have this all scheduled out. We do a 3 o'clock snack after he gets up from nap. And sometimes he'll get up and he'll be like, no snack. And I'm like, but we do a 3 o'clock snack. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, we're going to mess up our routine for dinner. But I've tried to be better about just relinquishing control and saying, okay, he just told me he is not hungry. He wants to go ahead and start playing. So we need to go ahead and start playing. So that has really helped. Another thing that that I've been better about that I learned from you is that a taste or a lick is a win.
Mhm.
And they don't have to eat everything. And so sometimes, especially we do this with fruit, he will just take a bite out of it and he'll either spit it out or then throw it on the floor. And I'm like, hey, that was a win. He took a bite out of that today, or he, smashed it in his mouth before he spit it out. And I actually had someone, it's so funny, you'll love this. I had someone that DM'd me one time because I put that on my story where it was like, he won't eat this, but it is going on his plate. And they were like, seems a little bit wasteful, don't you think?
I
I
mean,
was
yes.
like, it's two blueberries, two blueberries. I mean, come on.
I mean,
But
sure,
you
it's
just have to keep
wasteful, but
trying.
you have to like if our kids are not going to learn to like things unless we give them the opportunity to. And so if you
Mhm,
have the perception that this is wasteful, you're never giving them the opportunity to learn to like that. And that I'm not attacking you. If that's your perspective, that's your prerogative, that's fine. But if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. But here's the thing is like then don't have the expectation that your kid's going to be an adventurous eater because
mhm,
you're not giving them the opportunity to learn. And that's just the fact of the
mhm,
matter. Well, yes, there are different scenarios why kids might be picky and continuing to expose might not be the solution if that's not your kid. However, if you're not putting it on their plate, how are they ever going to learn to like it? And
mhm,
so that's, one of the things is we are responsible for the when, where, and what shows up on our kids' plate. And if we are allowing them to dictate the what, well, then we are giving them responsibilities that they have no business having the responsibility of doing. Of course,
mhm,
if I was a toddler or just me in general, of course I want to eat plain carbohydrates that are just snacks, crunchy. Because here's the thing, to your point of Carter took a bite of a banana and some days he'll spit it out. Fruit is so inconsistent. Fruit and vegetables are so inconsistent. Some days they're a little more sweet, some days they're a little more bitter, a little more crunchy, a little more bit more mushy. You know what's not inconsistent? Their favorite snack food. A goldfish is a
mhm,
goldfish, and it's always going to taste the same every
mhm.
single time. So they trust it. Fruit, they can't trust it. Or vegetables, they can't trust it. And so that's
Can't
normal.
be
There are
trusted.
days where I'm like, I like broccoli, but not today. I'm not interested. And so your kids are no different.
Mhm,
And so
mhm,
understanding too that picky eating isn't like necessarily they're being picky. It might just be that the fruit tastes like crap today and they're just not feeling it. And that's okay. And
mhm,
also toddlers from the age of they start to learn about 15 months to about 4 years old that they are in control of what goes in their body. They can't control a whole heck of a lot
mhm,
else, but they can control if they eat and how much they eat. And they are learning to test boundaries. And so it is developmentally appropriate for your toddler to be picky. It's continuing to stay in control of your responsibilities of what shows up on their plate and keep exposing it. I know it seems wasteful, but we got to give them the opportunities.
Well, and two things that you've done that have worked well are smaller portion sizes and time. And so, first of all, like we said, okay, I am not putting a pile of blueberries on his plate knowing he doesn't like blueberries, but I'm exposing him to a few. And I'm also going to let them sit through the duration of the meal and maybe a little bit after. And I know you talk about this all the time that your kids come back for what was left on their plate after dinner time is over, and we'll do that too. I'll leave the snack or I'll leave the plate sitting out and he'll come back and decide like, you know what, that doesn't sound so bad anymore.
Yeah.
And he'll give it a shot.
Yeah, and just again, as long as you're okay with it, like, having whatever your routine is, it's not going to be identical to what my routine is or what we do, but whatever you do, be consistent with it and just stay, all right, we have a breakfast around this time. You don't necessarily have to be Elena and say at 3 o'clock we have snack. But again, if that's what works in your house, Elena, that's what works in your house. But, just staying consistent with that routine in the eating episodes. If he's not hungry at 3 o'clock, okay, well, buddy, that's our snack. You have about another 30-minute window that I'll let you have it. If not, we're gonna do dinner. And then in your mind, knowing
Mhm.
very well that you might have to have an early dinner because he didn't eat snack. So, just rolling with it is truthfully being okay with or inconsistent with your routine, but being okay with the variables that pop up, I guess.
Yes. Motherhood. Hashtag motherhood.
Yes.
Maybe that's our like tagline for the Q&As.
Hashtag
Okay,
mom.
let's go into another question that kind of falls in line with, okay, maybe they are picky, maybe they're not eating as much. Multiple factors can be coming into play here, but question about feeding a 2-year-old and a 9.5-month-old trying to gain some weight. Sierra, this is definitely your
Yeah.
arena.
So I would obviously want to know a little bit more context here, making sure that one, you're following along with your pediatrician. I would imagine that the pediatrician has kind of had this conversation, but again, I don't ever want to assume. But if you feel like your child is struggling to gain weight or gaining too much weight or whatever the case may be, always, always, always consult with your pediatrician. And I get this question a lot: is, hey, I'm concerned because my child's only in the fifth percentile or seventh percentile, and they're so small. And my first question back is, okay, well, are they growing on their own little curve? And I think as moms, especially with my first baby, I was so caught up in even being a pediatric nurse practitioner, I was so caught up in the weight percentiles that, oh, my baby is so
Mhm.
chunky, or, oh, my baby's doing so good. She's in the 80th percentile. That means she's doing great. And they don't really mean anything. That just means, truthfully, where does your baby fall on average compared to other babies? Same weight or same age. And so if your baby is fifth percentile, seventh percentile, and they are continuing to grow on their own growth curve, and they are not crossing several growth percentiles, like in regards to, dropping
Mhm.
weight, I'm not overly concerned. Now, I that might not be the case if it's a young baby, if they're, not growing as rapidly, like a, couple week old baby. Again, that's why I say collaborate with your physician. Um, but if they are growing on their own growth curve, I'm usually not concerned in it because it will even itself out. What tends
Mhm.
to happen is parents get so fixated on these growth curves, and they start forcing their kids to eat and start getting them to do anything and everything they can to get them to eat, putting them in front of screens, doing all of these crazy tactics to try to put on weight for their kid. And these kids end up, I don't want to categorize or put anybody in a box, but a lot of times kids end up with feeding issues or picky eating later down the road because of all of the tactics that were used to try to get
Mhm.
them to gain weight. So truthfully, I am more of as long as baby is healthy, no other health concerns in regards like medical diagnoses that we were worried of. I am more of a let's watch and wait as long as they are growing on their own growth
Mhm.
curve. But there are still things that we can do, is making sure that we are looking at the food that we are offering and making sure that it is as nutrient dense as possible so we can optimize, their growth and development as best as possible. So looking at things that do have a higher fat content, like avocado, nuts, nut butters, adding a little bit of grass-fed butter to their foods, anywhere that
Don't
you can.
put butter on their broccoli though.
Don't put it on their broccoli if they're 4 years old, man.
Maybe
uh,
ask permission first.
My gosh, yeah. Like, hey, do you want the green plate or the blue plate? Because God forbid I give you the wrong color. We're flipping tables in this house if I do. Geez. But looking at what you're doing with their overall nutrition. Are we breastfeeding? Are we formula feeding? Are we giving them enough at frequent intervals? And then just again, staying consistent with the when, where, and what we offer them, and allowing them to decide if and how much. And truthfully too, if, are they filling up on milk? Are they filling up on beverages that aren't allowing them to come to the meal hungry to allow them
Mhm.
to eat enough to gain weight? So just a
Mhm.
lot of different variables that we can look at, but the biggest one is don't hone in on the growth charts, and think that you're failing as long as your baby is growing.
So true. I was so much more focused on them with our first pregnancy or delivery than with our most recent one. Now I'm like, I don't know where she falls. I think they said it at the appointment, but either I got probably 2.5 hours of sleep or I just wasn't paying attention because now
The
we're
only
doing
one
good.
caught my eye with this one is she's 97th percentile for length. And I'm like, what? I'm like third percentile for height. So that's laughable. That's why I was like, it's the only reason I remember that one. But her dad is
Maybe you get one, Sierra. She'll be your tall one.
Are you going to be so cautious? Yeah.
Yes, we have her tagging along for today's episode, which I love. That's what this is all about. I know there's the video version, but there's the audio version too. I have to remember there's both, but I love it. Okay, let's see. We picked out a couple more that we were going to chat about today. Okay, let's go ahead and go into the introducing solids because I think it makes sense with the questions we've already been talking about, Sierra. And I will say, I'll share my perspective, and then I know that you have so much that goes into this that you help moms with is what we do when it comes to introducing solids. Because I've been getting a lot of questions about baby led weaning lately in my DMs, and just the pressure to do this beautiful social media curated version of baby led weaning. And I want to encourage, first of all, go with your gut and go with what you feel confident in. So, what we did is we did the combination of baby led weaning, but we also did some purees. And I loved doing purees because the different nutrients that specifically Carter, whenever we did it with him, that he was able to take in that I didn't necessarily see. He didn't really participate in baby led weaning the way that I thought it should be in my mind. And so I started to lack confidence. So, my first like reminder for any mom heading into feeding is do what feels right to you, obviously in collaboration with any health professionals as well, but you don't have to do one or the other too. Is my other reminder. Is it's like breastfeeding and formula feeding in my mind, where we stress out and stress out about it being perfect, one thing or the other, when ultimately you have to do what's best for you and your child. And all we're focused on is them being able to be exposed to these foods, gain these oral motor skills so that they can develop better skills and habits for later on, right? It just lays the foundation. And Sierra's nodding her head, so hopefully I'm in line with what she's going to say. But the second thing, that their ability to sit up. I want them to be able to get up and support themselves so that they can feed safely. And that is when we ultimately start food in our house. So it's usually around 6 months is what we've done, Sierra. I don't know what you recommend. So I'll let you kind of chime in on your tips.
That's my biggest thing too is, there is no right or wrong way. The research does not indicate that purees is better or baby-led weaning is better, and nor does it confirm that baby-led weaning prevents picky eating. So, truthfully, it's
Mhm.
whatever you want to do. And I'll say this, with my first, we were told to introduce rice cereal at 4 months old by my pediatrician. And I did, and she absolutely hated it. And I was like, and I
Mhm.
tasted it. I'm like, well, no wonder she does. This is terrible. Well, and truthfully, she
Mhm.
just wasn't ready. And we waited until 6 months, and I started with just solids at that point. And she was a kid that didn't like purees, like the texture of it, she just didn't like it. And so we completely did baby led weaning and just whole foods. And with my son, he was ready for solids at 4 months old. Like,
Mom wanted to eat.
boy was sitting up, holding his head up, crawling at 4 months old and ready for food. And we did a mixture of baby led weaning and purees, mostly just because of I was very adamant I'm not cooking multiple meals. And sometimes a pureed version was just easier to modify it for him than the other things. So we did a combo. And I don't know what this one's gonna hold. Every kid's so different. But to your point of the biggest thing is one, doing what you feel is right for you. And then truthfully making sure that your baby is ready. And I know most pediatricians and most providers are still recommending 4 months of age for introducing solids. And I don't want to say most because I think the narrative is kind of changing, but it's not about the number of months that your child is. It's more of developmentally ready is how ready is your child, because
Mhm.
what you want is to make sure that they are safe. And so if they are not ready to be able to take on solids, then it could pose a risk for their safety. And what I mean by readiness is, Elena mentioned it, is being able to hold their head up, being able to sit up
Mhm.
minimally assisted, being able to, are they leaning at your food? Are they showing interest in what it is that you have?
Yeah.
And the reason why you want them to be able to sit up and hold their head up is because those muscles that are used to hold them upright are the same muscles that are used for the oral motor skills, as well as being able to
Mhm.
swallow the food,
Mhm.
protect their airway. And so if they're not sitting up, they're not holding their head up, they don't have the muscular development to be able to do those things safely. And so that is why
Mhm.
you have to be developmentally ready. And so, like I said, my daughter wasn't ready until 6 months. My son, totally ready at 4 months. And so just every baby's going to be different, but around 6 months is usually when babies are ready for that. And there's no right or
Mhm.
wrong way, whether you start with a solid food as their first food or a puree. It's truthfully whatever you feel best.
Mhm. Listen to your gut. Listen to your gut. It's I know with feeding, I think like with many things in motherhood, we just overcomplicate it, but if you can just tune out the noise and listen to your gut, even whenever it comes to Lena, like she is staring at food, she is leaning forward. Girlfriend would probably love a bite, but developmentally, I am not confident that she's there yet. And I'm going to listen to my mom gut and I'm going to feel confident in that. And so as soon as I feel that she can sit up better supported, she can hold her head up a little bit better, then yeah, we're going to go for it. But mama, tune out the noise a little bit. Don't think that either one way or the other has to look perfect based on what you've seen, and just try different things and figure out what works for each kid. I think it's just a great
To know
takeaway.
that your first food doesn't have to be rice cereal. There
No.
are much more nutrient dense options that are going to be better for growth and development and gut health than rice cereal.
Mhm.
So know that
Mhm.
that doesn't have to be your first food, regardless of what you've been taught or your mom or
Mhm.
your grandma tells you.
I'll share a tip that I really love that I heard from another mom whenever we started feeding. And again, this does not have to be this way. This is just ideas. This is what worked well for us is we did start with less sweet foods to expand his palate when it comes to different vegetables before we dove into fruits, because I do feel like it's a little bit easier to get them bought into fruits when you're doing pure if you do purees or even if you do baby led weaning. So we did start with more less sweet foods, that's a poor way of saying that, in order to kind of get him to try different things before he found out that he just really loved the fruit.
Yeah, and truthfully though, babies are just kind of hardwired to prefer taste, like or prefer sweet
Mhm.
taste. Breast milk is a little sweeter, and so that's just kind of
Yes.
what they gravitate towards. And to your point about, allowing them to develop tastes for other things that are less sweet. One last thing that I'll leave on this is just making sure that when you are introducing foods, that one, they are nutrient dense options and they aren't with added sugars. And the reason being is because of, yes, we don't want to add things to their food that they don't need that can cause health risks, but truthfully it's their one of the reasons is their taste preference. If we're giving them things with
Mhm.
added sugar before the age of 2, which by the way the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 0 grams of added sugar for less than 2, if we are introducing those things we can set ourselves up for failure down the road where they don't prefer anything without added sugar. So
Mhm. Mic drop. Okay, let's go on to our mom guilt question because I love the mom guilt question and I don't want us to run out of time without talking about that one. So, navigating mom guilt while trying to have your own goals. Which one of us wants to go first?
I'll let you go first.
Oh my gosh. So we chatted about this a little bit before the episode because in transparency, before we even answer this question, we both struggle with this. And I think that you will probably never reach a stage in motherhood where you don't struggle with this to some degree because every time you say yes to something, you say no to something else. And all is fair when it comes to motherhood and your own goals in that sense as well. And so every time that I say yes to mom's working overtime, I say no to my family, to my children. Every time that we as moms say yes to our careers, our fitness goals, our marriage, it all is an energy exchange and a time exchange. And so I think it's just being aware that there's never going to be a perfect balance. However, there are certain seasons of life where you say more yeses to certain things and more nos to other things, and or that time shift is off balance. And so Sierra and I have talked about this before on one of our prior episodes where, hey, if it is contributing to your health and wellness goals, well, you may have less time invested in that. Your meal prep may get a lot simpler. Your workouts may get a lot shorter. They may go to home workouts instead of gym workouts, and you can make a shift while still having that goal. And if it's career based, it may look different. There may be sacrifices you make while still progressing towards your career goals. Sierra and I are both hard workers, and I think we could both put our heads down and work like 150 hours a week, but I think it's just always keeping in mind, hey, what is that goal and how much time am I willing to give that goal so that I can still show up in my other roles and be present as a mom? And that's something that I'm constantly assessing myself where it's like, y'all, there are 4,000 things I want to do with MWO. Literally 4,000. Dylan would divorce me if I took on 3,500 of them. So I try and contain myself. But it's just a matter of saying, "Hey, in the future, those are things I would love to do with the brand. But right now, I need to make sure that I can, first of all, keep chasing this goal, keep supporting MWO, but also that I can keep showing up for my kids, that I can put my phone down, shut my computer, and just stack blocks or race cars across the carpet on the living room floor." And so I think in my opinion, it's just this constant awareness and checking in with yourself at the end of each day. Hey, how did I do? What could I do differently? And being realistic about what those goals are and how long you're willing to commit to them.
Yeah, and I think that I think it's two facet for me. One, I am a firm believer in you should have goals as a mom, whether that is career based or fitness based, faith based. Like you should have goals for yourself because if you don't, you're not pouring into yourself and building yourself up so then you can best pour into your family. Um, and they need to see you chasing goals so they know that, hey, mom does hard things, or mom is mom is laying the foundation for what I should be following, right? We
Mhm.
are the example for our family, our husbands, our kids, and all of our friends around us too. And so I am a firm believer that you should have goals. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have the goal of running a marathon or running, doing some CrossFit based competition or a bodybuilding show. That's not what I'm saying. Maybe
Mhm.
that fitness goal is, hey, I'm committing to 30 minutes every single day of some sort of movement for myself. Because guess what? I'm going to feel better after I do that movement and pour into myself, and I'm able to show up for my kids. I'm less likely to blow up on them. I am more likely to be present in a situation. And so pouring into yourself, I think, is really, really important. And being okay with that, like that is not something you should feel guilty about. But to your point, like,
Mhm.
I don't think we're ever going to not feel guilty. I think it's just in our nature we should be with our kids 24/7. But you are also a human too. And who are you going to be when your kids grow up, right? Like when they move on
Mhm.
without you, like, and you have not found any sort of thing that brings you joy outside of your children. I'm not there. I've not navigated that point in my life yet, but having something for yourself too is okay. But there's a fine line with that, of to your point of building a career, or being a full-time mom. Like, you can't have all of it all at the exact same time. And to your point of different seasons, some seasons you're able to pour into it, one of those a little bit more than the other. And maybe you do have a season of life right now where your fitness, you're like, I am getting it and I am going to be the fittest that I've ever been. Or maybe you're a new mom with a 10-week-old baby who it's like, hey, right now I am surviving and I'm going to do what I need to do for my health. My fitness is going to your point, is going to be very simple. Right now I'm getting 30 minutes of my meal prep is very simple, but it's still a priority, but it's not something that I'm able to pour the gas on because I got to pour the gas on my family right now. Or maybe
Mhm.
that's a career shift, right? Where you are taking a step back so you can pour into your family. But finding the thing for you, that brings you the most joy while still being able to show up as a mom, I think is really important. But I think, yeah, I was looping back to my first point of you should have goals, you should have dreams, and be okay with pouring some of the gas on those for yourself.
Mhm. And it's okay if it takes a little bit longer. Stop comparing. I think that is so hard. It's just a comparison of what someone else can do in XYZ time frame. And Sierra, we talk about this constantly. I was just messaging with a mama this morning that's in our one-on-one coaching. And she was saying, it's slow and steady and I feel frustrated, but I also don't want to sacrifice any of the areas where I know I'm falling a little bit short. I had cake at my son's birthday party. I don't want to sacrifice that. I don't want my son to remember me not having cake at his birthday party. We went camping. I took healthy snacks while we were camping on Memorial weekend, but I do feel like there was, some foods that were a little bit off the plan. And so it's just understanding that there's that balance of, hey, I'm not willing to sacrifice being present with my family and living this lifestyle. So I know it'll take me a little longer to reach my goals, but I'm
Right.
okay with that because I'm still making progress. I'm still showing up every day and just investing in these little habits.
I think that is, you said it beautifully. Like, you got to have your expectations have to align with what you're currently okay with doing. If your
Mhm.
expectation is I want to be absolutely shredded and by the end of the summer, well, guess what? You're going to have to be a little bit more strict. Like, and you're going to have
You're
to
not having cake at the birthday
not
parties.
having cake at the birthday party and you can't eat off of the plan. Like that, I think is whatever your goal is, you have to be okay with what your actions need to be. Or if you're okay with what your actions are, you have to be okay with the outcome. So if that means that it's going to take you a little bit longer, you got to be okay with that. Same thing with your career. Like whatever decision you make to do, you got to be okay with the outcome. And stop comparing. If that's your decision, be confident in your decision and for your family, um, and be okay with it.
Mm-hmm. 100%. All right, Sierra. I say let's tie together today's episode and we'll pick up where we left off as usual.
Yes.
And we can always take more questions in our DMs and question boxes and be adding them to these episodes. And so, mamas, if there's something that you're curious about, it's not that we won't answer your question until the next episode. We'll message you back, but it gives us good ideas for what we can add here and what you want to hear us talk more in depth about. And so, don't ever hesitate to DM myself or Sierra. I put her information in the podcast description so that you can always reach out to her. She is a great resource for all things when it comes to our kiddos, especially when it comes to their nutrition and just overall wellness. And so, Sierra, thanks for hanging out. First of all, always happy to have you on here.
Sarah, thanks for cooperating, sis.
Yeah. Vera's taking the most beautiful little shoulder nap right now. But truly, mamas, just come hang out with us. Get these, like, see the answers to these questions, because I know, like I said, when one of us struggles with something, usually there's more of us that are right in there with you. And sometimes it's a question that we didn't even know to ask, but that we can learn from and just learn from each other and not feel comparison, not feel guilt, but just keep trying to show up a little bit better for our families each and every day. And so, the reminder we'll give you every single time that you come to one of our MWO podcast episodes is, Mama, you're doing a really amazing job. And we'll talk soon. If you loved this episode of Moms Working Overtime, do me a favor. Share it on social media or send it to another mom to remind her that you love her and that she's doing such an amazing job. There's nothing more incredible that we can do in this community than remind other mamas of their strength. I'm so glad you were here today, and just know that I appreciate you an overtime amount.